Story number 1. I never used to believe in ghosts. I'd always been the skeptic in my friend group, the one who laughed off ghost stories and urban legends. But that night around the campfire changed everything. We were deep in the woods, miles away from any town, surrounded by towering pines that swallowed the moonlight. The fire crackled and spat embers into the air as we shared stories, passing around a bottle of cheap whiskey. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and damp earth. The night was unnervingly silent, aside from the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. It started with the whistling, a slow, eerie tune carried through the trees. At first we thought it was the wind, but it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It faded in and out as if whoever or whatever was making the sound was moving. My skin prickled, but I told myself it was just another camper, maybe someone playing a prank. The others grew quiet, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Then the footsteps started, soft at first, like someone was stepping carefully through the underbrush. They circled us just beyond the glow of the fire. I strained my eyes, but the darkness was too thick. One of my friends grabbed a flashlight and aimed it toward the sound, but there was nothing, just trees and shadows. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. A sudden gust of wind blew through the campsite, and the fire dimmed for just a moment. That's when we saw it. Across the fire, just beyond the reach of the light, stood a figure, tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its posture unnatural. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there watching. My chest tightened, and I felt an overwhelming sense of wrongness, like my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. Someone gasped, another scrambled to grab their phone, but the moment the screen lit up, the figure was gone. We didn't stay long after that. We doused the fire and packed up in record time, stuffing our gear into our bags with shaking hands. The whole way back to the car, we felt it, an invisible presence just behind us, just out of sight. The whistling never stopped. When we finally reached the car and piled in, I dared one last glance into the trees. For a split second, I saw it again, closer than before, still motionless, still watching. We peeled out of there, the tires kicking up dirt and leaves. No one spoke. No one had to. I don't go camping anymore, and I never, ever ignore whistling in the woods. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, one of my friends went missing. No note, no sign of struggle, just gone. The only thing left behind was his phone, sitting on his kitchen counter. His last search history chilled me to the bone, whistling in the woods at night. Police searched, but nothing turned up. No clues, no leads. We all tried to move on, convincing ourselves that it had nothing to do with that night, that it was just a coincidence. Then another friend disappeared. Same circumstances, vanished without a trace. It was like something was picking us off, one by one. A creeping dread settled in my bones. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in the woods. A week later, I woke up to a soft sound outside my window, a slow, eerie whistle. I'm writing this now because I don't think I have much time left. I can feel it watching me. I don't know what it is, but I know it's coming. If you ever hear whistling in the woods at night, don't stop, don't look, and whatever you do, don't listen. Story number 2. It started as an ordinary night, the kind of crisp autumn evening that makes the air smell like dying leaves and distant smoke. The 6 of us had set up camp deep in the woods, miles from civilization, looking for that perfect combination of thrill and relaxation. A bottle of whiskey passed between hands, and the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows against the trees. As the night stretched on, we fell into silence, staring into the fire, lost in our own thoughts. That's when the first sound came. A low, distant wail, like the wind moving through a hollow tunnel. We all heard it. Someone laughed nervously, brushing it off as just an animal, but something about it didn't feel natural. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching against the dry leaves beyond the tree line. I turned toward the sound, expecting to see a deer or a stray hiker, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive darkness beyond the reach of the fire. The others noticed it too. Someone muttered about how sound carries strangely in the woods, but their voice trembled. The air shifted. The warmth of the fire suddenly felt too weak, like something unseen had drained the heat from the clearing. The trees seemed to inch closer, their silhouettes twisting unnaturally in the firelight. The silence grew heavier, the weight of the unknown pressing against our chests. Then a whisper, low, breathy, and unmistakably human. It came from behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell over, expecting to see one of my friends playing a cruel joke, but their expressions told me everything I needed to know. They'd heard it too. Maybe we should call it a night, someone said, voice tight with unease. No one argued. One by one we retreated to our tents, zipping up the thin fabric, as if it could protect us from whatever was out there. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay stiff in my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds outside, branches cracking, the distant rustling of leaves. Then around 3 a.m., something changed. A single sharp cry rang through the woods. I bolted upright, heart hammering. It came from one of the tents. In the dim glow of my flashlight, I saw movement, shadows shifting against the fabric. I scrambled out, my breath curling in the frigid air. The others emerged too, confused and bleary-eyed, but one of us was missing. Jason's tent was open. Inside, his sleeping bag was empty, his belongings undisturbed. It was as if he had simply gotten up and walked into the woods. But that scream, he hadn't left willingly. We called his name, over and over, our voices breaking the unnatural stillness. No answer. Someone suggested we follow his footprints, but when we shone our lights on the ground, there were none. Just an undisturbed layer of fallen leaves. That was impossible. We had all seen his tent zipped shut just hours ago. If he had walked out, there would have been a trail. Then the whisper came again, closer this time. Right behind us. I turned so fast that my flashlight flickered, the beam catching something just beyond the trees, a figure, just out of reach, standing impossibly still. My stomach dropped. Jason, or something that looked like him. His features were barely visible in the shadows, but the way he stood, the unnatural stiffness, the way his head tilted slightly, as if listening, it wasn't right. Someone called his name, voice shaking. No response, no movement. Just that still, oppressive presence watching us. Then the flashlight flickered again, and when it steadied, he was gone. We didn't sleep after that. As soon as the first hint of dawn broke through the trees, we packed up and left, Jason's belongings untouched in his empty tent. We hiked in silence, each of us feeling the same gnawing horror. Jason was never found. We told the authorities everything about the scream, the missing footprints, the figure in the woods, but it didn't make sense. The official report said he must have wandered off, got lost, maybe fell into the river a few miles away, but we knew the truth. He hadn't wandered. Something had taken him. And the worst part, as we left that campsite, as the sun rose higher and we thought we were safe, I heard it one last time, a whisper, my name. Story number 3. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe if I put it down on paper, it will stop clawing at my mind. Maybe if I write it out, I can finally sleep, but I doubt it. We just wanted a weekend away. Me, Jordan, Kyle, and Chris. A trip into the mountains, far from the constant buzz of our city lives. Chris had found a spot deep in the woods, a place someone from his work had recommended. Secluded, he had said. Perfect for a campfire. Looking back, I wonder if that guy was playing a sick joke. The first night was perfect. We pitched our tents near a clearing by the lake. The sky stretched above us, endless and black, stars burning through the darkness. The fire crackled, warming our hands as we drank cheap beer and told stories that started off funny but turned eerie as the night went on. We laughed at each other's jumpiness, at the way the wind howled through the trees. It was Kyle who first pointed it out. Anyone else notice how quiet it's gotten? The fire popped. We sat in silence for a moment. The usual sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets were gone. Even the wind seemed to have stilled. I told myself it was normal that sometimes the woods just held their breath. Then Chris said, I think I saw something. We all turned in the direction he was looking. Beyond the fire, past the edge of the trees, it was hard to see in the dim light, but I swear there was something there, just at the edge of perception. A figure, a shadow, I don't know, but it was tall and still, like it had been standing there long before we noticed. Jordan laughed, tossing a stick into the fire. Probably just your eyes playing tricks on you. But Chris wasn't convinced. He grabbed his flashlight and stood up. I'm just gonna check it out. Before any of us could protest, he was already walking towards the trees. His flashlight beam wobbled over the trunks, casting long, shifting shadows. We watched him step past the first line of trees, then another, until he was gone. Minutes passed. He didn't come back. Jordan called his name. No answer. Kyle, usually the calmest, cursed under his breath and grabbed his own flashlight. We should go after him. I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body screamed to stay put, to stay in the light. But leaving Chris out there alone wasn't an option. We took our flashlights and followed his path into the woods. The deeper we went, the more I felt it. That wrongness, like the air itself was pushing against us. My skin prickled, and my breath felt too loud in the stillness. We found his flashlight first. It was lying on the ground, still on, its beam cutting through the darkness at an odd angle. No sign of Chris. Then we saw the footprints. His tracks led forward, deeper into the trees, but there was something else. Another set. Bigger. The strides were too long, too uneven. Jordan whispered, "What the hell?" A branch snapped behind us. We spun around, but the flashlights showed nothing, just trees. just the thick, suffocating dark. And then we heard it, a whisper, faint, breathy. It came from all around us, slipping through the trees like wind. "Help me," it was Chris's voice. Kyle called out, but the whisper came again, closer. "Help me." It sounded wrong, stretched, like someone mimicking his voice, but not quite getting it right. My stomach twisted. My grip on the flashlight tightened. We should have run, we should have left, but we didn't. The whisper came again, this time from behind me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I spun, shining my flashlight wildly, and that's when I saw it. Not Chris, not an animal, something else. A shape, just out of focus, standing impossibly still. It had no eyes, no face, just a smooth, featureless head. Long arms dangled at its sides, fingers too long, too thin. The air around it shimmered, like heat rising off pavement. Then it moved. I don't remember screaming, but I must have. Kyle grabbed my arm, yanking me backward. We ran, stumbling over roots, breath coming in ragged gasps. The whisper followed us, closer, louder. When we burst into the clearing, the fire was still burning, but the warmth was gone. The night had turned ice cold. We didn't stop. We didn't pack. We just ran to the car, fumbling with the keys, piling in and speeding off down the dirt road. We never found Chris. The search teams didn't either. They looked for days, no footprints beyond where we had seen them, no signs of struggle, just gone, like he had never been there at all. The official report said he probably got lost, that he wandered too far, that the elements took him, but I know better. I know something took him. I still hear his voice sometimes, at night, when I'm alone, whispering, asking for help, but I know better than to answer.